It's the Immigrant Unfiltered podcast with your host, Hamza Ali. And today I had the honor of meeting virtually, remotely, my first remote guest, Sana Wagner, who's on social media. We met through TikTok. My team reached out to her because she discusses a lot of controversial issues on social media that a lot of people don't talk about. Sana, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. I wanted to talk about before we get into anything and discuss more, about your journey and your details. I really wanted to get to know who is Sana Wagner. So tell our audience a little bit about who you are and who Sana Wagner is.
So I am a 28-year-old mom of two. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I am married. I have been married for, I guess we're coming up on 8 years now. I got married pretty young. I was only 20. I originally started on social media because I had been a stay-at-home mom for a few years and it was isolating. So I started on social media. I initially was going to share DIY home projects because I love doing that. And I shared a little bit of like my kids, my husband, and I quickly found that there was a community that wanted to learn more about that. So that was interesting. I wasn't ever planning on, sharing my personal life, but here we are. So I like to talk about, my interracial marriage. I talk about toxic family systems, which has been interesting. I also like to talk about like brown girl struggles, mom life, my love for fashion, and all of that. I feel like if I can even help one person feel less alone in their struggles and what they're going through, then it's all worth it for me.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. So, when did you find this journey of yours on social media? Like, when did you decide that this is what you wanted to use? And also, what are the platforms or what is the main platform that you decided to do this on?
I mean, I had been on, TikTok and Instagram for a while, just kind of scrolling, not really creating. I just felt like, TikTok is still new enough to where you can hop on it and it's organic enough to where my message can come out and reach other people. So yeah, it was TikTok, and then from TikTok, I kind of stepped out of my comfort zone and went to Instagram, which was terrifying. But yeah, here we are.
And so, did you start when everybody else started, which is like, I guess, 2020 when the pandemic first began and everybody was jumping on social media because that's where they were finding people to communicate with? Or are you more recent than that?
Um, I've only been doing it for like a year and a half. I wish I had started during the pandemic. I was very pregnant with my daughter during the pandemic. And I had my son who was like, they're 22 months apart, so he was little too. And I actually was very like against TikTok. My sister would send me TikToks all the time, like, you gotta watch this, so funny. I'm like, no, like TikTok's lame, whatever. So the irony.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember when I had first jumped on TikTok, everyone was telling me that, hey, Hamza, look, your target audience, your demographic is not on TikTok. It's just a bunch of people dancing. And I jumped on early on, right after the pandemic or right during the pandemic, rather. And today, I mean, most of my business is run through social media.
Right, right.
Is that something that you would say is working for you as well?
Yeah, yeah. I've taken a few breaks here and there. Last year was really hard for me. I went through so much stuff. So I took breaks when needed, and I found that the community was very welcoming every time I came back. It is a part of my day-to-day life. I actually do some social media management on the side now. So, you know,
So does that mean you're managing other accounts, like other than your own personal account?
yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I work for a local plastic surgeon. I'm new to this practice, but I was working for another surgeon before this, and I love it. It's flexible enough to where I don't have to put my kids in daycare. I don't have to leave them with the sitter. But yeah, I'm also able to kind of do my own thing and like not be a mom all the time.
That's awesome. I just think it's crazy how right after the pandemic, these opportunities have opened up, and now you have all these like remote opportunities that are absolutely phenomenal and very important for the workplace. And I also feel like they're a win-win for everyone who's involved.
I mean, I agree. There's so many it's so much more convenient, and I honestly feel like I'm so much more productive working from home. I'm able to get like a day's worth of work done within a few hours. With my kids, I'm able to, do household chores, run a load of laundry while I'm editing. Yeah, online work is the way to go.
Walk us through your journey, Sana. You post a lot of lifestyle stuff. You post a lot about your kids. You also post interesting controversy, and we want to hear about that.
It's random. It's whatever I'm going through in real life. I guess I kind of use TikTok as like an online diary in a way. It's whatever I'm going through in life. I My dad recently passed away, so I've been sharing, parts of that, how we've navigated that and extended family, how, that fun stuff has played out. Yeah, so I don't really have a strategy per se, but I post whatever I'm going through, and sometimes it does great and people resonate, and sometimes it flops and I'm left there, alone. It's fine.
I'm sorry to hear about your father, and I'm sure that impacted you greatly. But here's the thing, right? You have an audience, and they're here for you. And in these difficult times, you have to know that they are here for you, and they're listening to what you have to say. Walk me through all the controversial content that you have on your platform. Now, obviously, being part of the Desi community, the Middle Eastern community, there's a set of laws, there's a set of rules that you're obviously breaking. And I just want to understand why it's important for you to spread this message.
I feel like when I was going through these high conflict parts of my life, I felt very alone, very isolated. Social media does a really good job of making it look like it's all rainbows and butterflies. It's a highlight reel, and no one really talks about what's going on behind the scenes. On the off chance that I did see some content while scrolling that I related to, it was comforting to know, I'm not the only one going through this. So it was important to me that when I started posting content like this, that people are able to relate to it, to feel less alone. Um, it's not normal, but it's common going through some of these things. My TikTok is heavy on toxic family issues and setting boundaries, going no contact if needed, which, in the brown community is very taboo, right? Like what your parents say goes. Um, and so, yeah, I feel like it's an important conversation to have. I don't feel like everyone has, loving, supporting family. As I mean, you can see it in the comments. There's so many people that are hurting out there. It's unfortunate, but it's an important conversation to have.
Yeah, I totally get it. The convenience of having your family next to you is a huge advantage. I myself have my sister and my mom who live close by, and me having young kids, it's just such an advantage. I feel like the American culture is just not built that way, right? People are more independent and they want their freedom.
I am the oldest of 3. Both of my parents are immigrants. My mom is Urdu speaking, my dad is Punjabi speaking. So grew up learning both of them. Grew up with school being the most important thing. I am very fortunate in where I didn't really have to ever work to pay bills. I started working like retail here and there when I was like 18 for extra spending money. But I never had to work to survive. There was always just finish school, get your degree, and then, you have your whole life to work. And I'm very fortunate for that. I It was a very typical brown household in where there was a heavy it was important, like, what other people thought, like, our image, what will the aunties say? "You can't do this," like, "You can't do that." And I knew from a very early age when I had my family, when I had my kids, I didn't want any of that. Um, there's just no need for it. If you're not eating at my dining table at the end of the day, I really don't care about your opinion. So that was me. I guess I was like the rebellious one because I was always very outspoken about these issues growing up and being the oldest. My parents weren't really used to that. Um, so heavy influence on school. My parents wanted me to go to med school, become a doctor, quickly realized I can't do math. So I got a degree in psychology, which isn't a doc like it's not I'm not a doctor. So my dad wasn't too happy with that. But I'm happy with it. I'm very passionate about mental health and all that. Um, my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's when I was 10 years old ish, I believe. And I remember, learning about it and learning that, it's terminal. Like you only have a certain life expectancy at 10 years old. Um, so we dealt with that, and that became a really big part of our life was my dad being sick. And a lot of people don't realize about Parkinson's is it not only affects your motor skills, but it also affects you mentally. So my dad, probably around 2000, I want to say probably around 2012, 2013, had developed Parkinson's disease psychosis. But we didn't know it was psychosis at the time. We just thought, he's all these things that he's hallucinating, that he's seeing, maybe they are real. They weren't, but we didn't know that at the time. So he was super paranoid. He was already a very controlling. He's like your typical brown dad that's very stereotyped. Um, and so around my high school years, I was just trying to be a teenager. I was trying to fit in with everyone. And my dad realized that my values were not aligning with his values, and I was pulled out of school and sent to Pakistan. And I was sent to live with relatives that I didn't really know. So I think that was one of the biggest turning points of my life was because there was such a heavy like push for, school is so important. You got to do school, you got to do well. I was like a straight A student. And then all of a sudden I'm pulled out of school because my values aren't aligning with like my dad's values. So I lived in Pakistan on and off for a few years. I ended up graduating high school online, like a few months early than my peers. And then I started in college here, back in my hometown. I'm in Reno, Nevada. Started there. Um, at this point, I'm like 18 years old, and my dad's mental health is declining. So my mom is really busy in taking care of my dad and dealing with all that. And I'm big into school and taking care of my younger brother and sister. We were all very close. My sister's 3 years younger than me, and then my brother's 6 years younger than me. So dealt with that for a little bit. I'm balancing school, my siblings, home life, and things are getting pretty bad at home. None of us are really sure how to deal with this psychosis. We didn't even realize it was psychosis at the time. There was just lots of big fights happening, and we just thought, this is life. In the meantime, I didn't realize that my dad had sent my pictures to like a matchmaker. I'm like 19 around this time. And so, he's having conversations with me, it's good to settle down, do whatever you want after you're married, marry someone that can take care of you financially. You don't have to ever worry. He essentially didn't want me to struggle financially the way he did as an immigrant. He came here with $100 to his name, did the whole thing. So decided to give it kind of a shot, more for my mom's sake. She pleaded with me, just try. So this my picture got around to this surgeon's family, and I guess he liked how I looked, whatever. Went to go visit them down there. Great guy. He was, in the middle of his residency. Um, but after meeting him a few times, I knew it wasn't going to work. There was no way. He's a great guy. He's a very successful plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills now. I have nothing bad to say. Didn't work out. Told my mom about it. She's like, "All right, like I'll handle it." She had the whole arranged marriage thing. She was married when she was 17. She essentially did not want me to be like unhappy with my life. But at the same time, she didn't have too much of a say because my dad was like the head of the household. There was no convincing him. So during this time, I was also kind of talking to one of my friends from high school that I had met when I was 13. We had been talking for like 2 years. We really liked each other. I've known him, half my life at this point. But one day my mom just confronted me. She's like, "I know you're talking to someone. Who is it?" I'm like, "Oh no." Oh my gosh, it's that sixth sense. She knew. I don't know how. And keep in mind, like, this is all long distance. He's in the military. He's stationed in Hawaii. I'm in Nevada. So she's like, "You're always on the phone. You're always FaceTiming. Just tell me." So I was like, well, what's the worst that could happen, right? Like, I'm 19 now. They can't send me to Pakistan. Like, I'm an adult. So I told her, and she's like, if this is who you feel like your partner is going to be, then you have my blessing. She knew that my dad wasn't going to stop trying to get me married off, and she trusted my judgment. Um, so I'm talking to my now husband, and I'm like, I finally told my mom about us. Like, what do you think? And he's like, well, let's get married. And I'm like, okay. So, he came back from deployment. We just did our nikah in a masjid, and I moved out and I moved to Hawaii, and I was a military wife. In which that was a life of its own. It's crazy to think back at it now. Um, and then he got out of the military. He had done his 4 years. We decided to move back to Nevada to be close to family, and we both got back into school. We were young. We were 21 and 22. We were, I mean, essentially kids. Um, but we made it work. We both were working 50 hours a week. We were both in school full time, and we did it. And as he started to move up in his career, I got pregnant with my son. We decided to buy our first house. Um, and I dropped out of school because my pregnancies were very hard. Had my son, and that's kind of when we started to run into problems with boundaries. Um, I guess when we moved back from Hawaii, life was hard. We struggled a lot financially. It wasn't easy for us, and we didn't we got help from my side of the family, but nothing really on his side of the family, which I get. Like, if you're not gonna help us, you're not gonna help us. It is what it is. Um, but no one really cared to be a part of our life up until I got pregnant with my son, on that side. So that's kind of where I guess like my mama bear mode kicked in, and I'm just like that's not okay. You can't just ignore us when we're going through struggles, and now we're going through, this happier time in our life when we're having our first child, and all of a sudden you want to be a part of our life. So that is kind of where that toxic family dynamic kicks in, and it was hard. I'm now a new mom. I'm only like 23 years old. I'm trying to navigate, being a mom, postpartum depression, all this stuff on top of this really toxic system. And I won't go into too much detail about, everything that happened, but my husband and I came to an agreement that for now it's probably best to just go no contact and focus on our family, our son, our lives. And so that's what we did. And so we've been no contact for a few years now. I, now have my daughter too, and we're close to my side of the family. I live down the street from them, which is amazing. But yeah, so that's kind of what I talk about. I don't think I've ever openly said, it's in-law issues, but there you go.
Yes, I do feel like that is very important. I mean, look, they're gonna learn the American side, the American culture either way. They're born, and they're gonna grow up here in the US. It's important to teach them your part of the culture as well.
Yeah, and culture it's a really big deal for me because my kids are mixed, and the town I live in, the Desi community, it's expanding. I feel like I have a bad taste in my mouth from growing up here, so I don't really associate with too many of those people. But because my family is, right up the street, I'm able to teach my kids about like my culture and holidays and customs and everything. So I am raising them to be bilingual. My son, daughter can kind of understand Urdu, can kind of speak it a little bit. It's really important to me, and I'm very lucky to have that. Yeah.
Could we touch on that a little more? I mean, you obviously said you're teaching them the language and the culture, but do you think they're going to have a like traditional Pakistani upbringing here in the US? So the reason I bring it up is because, I'm Middle Eastern, but I married also sort of outside of my culture. Now my wife is Middle Eastern, she's Lebanese, I'm Yemeni, so we're a little far apart. And in the world of Arabia and the Middle East, those are two completely different cultures. And my kids are older now, and I can definitely tell you that they lean more towards the Lebanese culture than they would do towards my culture. And it's obviously because they spend more time with their mother, and the mother is always more nurturing, I guess, than a father would be. We do spend, our quality time together, but just because they spend most of their time with their mom, they are taking that part of the culture a little more. Would you say that's something similar in your situation?
No, I definitely agree, and, I'm a stay-at-home mom, I mean, minus working sometimes, but they are, around me and my family. They see my mom and sister every single day. Every day. So they are more around me and they do, they all gonna learn a lot of the culture, but their dad's side is, they're white, they're Caucasian, and they're living in America. So it's like they're gonna learn that culture in school anyways. I don't know how it's gonna play out as they get older. I know that we've actually talked about moving out to Texas because there is more diversity out there, and I feel like that would definitely help. It's not something that I had growing up. My schools, my neighborhood, it was all very Caucasian growing up, and I always felt kind of like an outsider. So I mean, if I can get closer to like more Muslims, more like Desis, I that would be ideal. I would love to teach them more about my culture. I would never, I'm not going to move to Pakistan to like fully immerse them, but yeah, community is important, I feel like.
Yeah, so word from the wise, from someone who's on the other end of that. So obviously, I moved to a place called Sugarland, Texas, which, if you guys don't know, is a melting pot of diversity. So basically, in your case, it's like a Pakistan outside of Pakistan, right? Everybody here is from a different part of the world. There's a lot of immigrants that come in, move here. And the cool part about this is that, for example, my son went to school, fasted on his own, first time, and also started praying on his own first time just because that's what all the other kids are doing here. Now, let's talk about something we all face as immigrants, specifically Middle Easterns, Pakistanis, Desis, and that is pushback. Did you get any pushback starting your content, starting your journey?
Yeah, I mean, every now and then I'll post something where I'm like, I know there's so many people that are going to disagree with that, but there's also going to be people that agree with it. So, let's light it on fire. Let's post it. Let's enjoy. Thanks for getting my views up. But yeah, it's, people, there's some online bullies there where I'm just like you really had the time to sit there and make a racist comment on every single one of my videos. You're telling me to go back to my country when I was born here. Right. Like why? Why?
Excellent to hear that you had the support from your family. I know for a fact that being from a Middle Eastern background or a Desi background, things can get challenging. Parents tend to come intervene, sort of, and tend to come in the way sometimes. So the fact that you have such supportive parents is just such a fresh breath of air. Now, one thing my audience loves to hear with almost every speaker that I bring on is their social media strategy, right? Or their social media presence. So, why bring your entire life onto social media? What message are you trying to spend? What are you trying to tell people?
TikTok is always, always, always my favorite. The content's very organic. I have recently started doing really well on Instagram after, a year and a half of trying. I finally had my first viral post, which is amazing. So I'm seeing some traffic there. I was actually just filming my intro to YouTube. I guess I'll try YouTube as well now to have some more in-depth conversations. But yeah, I feel like the audience is very different on each platform. It's interesting. Instagram, I'm finding there's a lot more they're haters up there. TikTok, I found like a lot more like, this is so relatable and oh, thank you so much. On Instagram, it's like, you're stupid, you're dumb, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, well, thanks. My next 7 years. Man, I haven't even thought about that. I would like to go back to school and get my master's in psychology. I'm in a season of life where my kids are too little, life is too busy for me to start grad school. But I'd like to get my psychology degree. I wanted to become a therapist. Mental health and connecting with people and helping people is very important to me. Um, I don't know, maybe I'll end up becoming a therapist and, I'll do that whole thing. That would be amazing. I would love to continue to spread love, spread my message, spread support on social media as long as I can. Um, and just grow with my community, see what they need from me, and see if I'm able to deliver that. I feel like this is definitely my first time sharing my full story. I've shared like tidbits here and there, but I've never gone out and actually shared everything. So this was nice. It was very therapeutic.
What are your thoughts on the TikTok ban? I know that a lot of creators, especially some of them, what are your thoughts on the TikTok ban? I know a lot of creators personally that are moving or creating backup accounts on other platforms because they're worried about TikTok and they're worried that it's going to go away.
If it happens, it happens. They're gonna receive a lot of pushback if they were to ban something like TikTok. TikTok isn't just funny videos, it's not just dancing videos. There's a lot of knowledge to be shared on there. I've learned so much from TikTok. Things that, they don't share on the news, I sometimes will learn from TikTok. So they'll receive a lot of pushback if the ban were to happen, but I also feel like someone would immediately create something similar and people would just jump on that. I've heard of like, Lemonade and all that. We'll see, if people are really jumping on there, I can jump on there too. Um, but if something happens to TikTok, I am on Instagram and YouTube now.
Now, one thing our audience wants to know, and I tend to ask this to every guest that I have on the podcast, is what are the next 7 years in your life going to look like?
Next 7 years. Man, I haven't even thought about that. I would like to go back to school and get my master's in psychology. I'm in a season of life where my kids are too little, life is too busy for me to start grad school. But I'd like to get my psychology degree. I wanted to become a therapist. Mental health and connecting with people and helping people is very important to me. Um, I don't know, maybe I'll end up becoming a therapist and, I'll do that whole thing. That would be amazing. I would love to continue to spread love, spread my message, spread support on social media as long as I can. Um, and just grow with my community, see what they need from me, and see if I'm able to deliver that.
That's awesome. It seems like we're going to need you back in season 2 to get an update on where you are and how much of that you've accomplished.
Yeah, I feel like this is definitely my first time sharing my full story. I've shared like tidbits here and there, but I've never gone out and actually shared everything. So this was nice. It was very therapeutic.
I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast, and I really appreciate this, Sana. Once again, thank you very much for being on the Immigrant Unfiltered podcast. And I think we really got a chance to explore who you are on the other side of social media.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I truly appreciate it. I'm excited.